For an extraordinary presentation of Bathroom Boutique, tubs and whirlpools, bidets, and bathroom jewelry. Robinson Waterworks,
2285 Canby Street.
BCTV, we're giving it all we got.
Good morning. The most calm, reasoned assessment of Finance Minister Hugh Curtis's budget delivered in Victoria yesterday is that it is a cold-blooded bookkeepers balancing the budget act with kicks in the teeth for almost everybody in the name of stability and eventual recovery from the recession. Kick in the teeth to 4,000 more civil servants, FTEs, who are going to get the chop. A kick in the teeth not only to the poor, the cuts to the single and the childless welfare recipients, but a kick in the teeth to taxpayers, which what appears to be a new tax, 8% in personal income, to raise $167 million, to make up what Hugh says we're being cheated out of by Ottawa, plus maybe a $50 fee to families to replace the present user charges in British Columbia. And a kick in the teeth, surprisingly enough, and we'll put this right to Hugh Curtis in due course, to small business. Provincial government grants down $4 million. Federal cost-sharing programs with the feds down $12 million, and who knows how much we'll lose on the federal cost-sharing programs. No job creation, no housing, nothing for the unemployed. But the most astonishing fact of all, it seems to me, is he's taking $470 million from our resource revenues to eliminate the age-old debt of the previously bankrupt BC Rail, and if he hadn't taken that, the deficit at the end of the 85 year would be $200 million. Mr. Curtis will have a chance to tackle my assessments and straighten me out, including the fact that they're going to unleash the stock market, the real estate, and the travel agencies with less regulation. And it looks like Kofi, the Council of Forest Industries, are going to have their way doing the timber cruising and, of course, the log scaling throughout the industry. But first, let's set the tone with an extract and some other reactions of Mr. Curtis's speech to the legislature in Victoria yesterday.
Office space is being reduced. Motor vehicle fleets are shrinking. Many programs are being scaled back or eliminated. Privatization is being achieved where appropriate. Ministries are becoming leaner and more efficient. All activities are under review, and more productive ways of doing the necessary jobs are being found.
Particularly encouraged by the suggestion with regard to taxation, that there will be a review of the impact of taxation before any further business taxation is introduced. We find the remarkable achievement of reducing the size of expenditures, reducing the size of the budget as something probably of national significance.
I would suggest that the whole budget proposal is economic suicide. Consumer spending is still severely depressed in this province, and this budget won't increase consumer confidence. The Conference Board and many BC economists have laid blame for slow economic growth squarely on provincial government restraint policies and their disruptive effect. Yet the government proceeds on a course of further cutbacks and fiscal conservation. It's madness.
And live in our studio in Victoria is the Finance Minister, Hugh Curtis, who'll be on after the break. But first, let me tell you that in the studio I've got the two top executives of the Canadian Film Development Corporation, Ed Prevost, the chairman, and Andre Lamy, the executive director. And later, for a light-hearted moment towards the end of the program, we'll have somebody back from the 60s, two of them, the Smothers brothers. But first, fun with Hugh Curtis, live in our studio in Victoria, after the break.
Difficult choices have been necessary in the preparation of the budget, as with others preceding it. But I believe the result fairly and responsibly serves the interests of British Columbia.
Mr. Curtis is Finance Minister in our Social Credit Government of Victoria. Mr. Curtis, when you finish your 4,000 layoffs in 85, I get the feeling that you're going to have more layoffs of the civil service in 86, correct?
Jack, good morning. First of all, I think that it is unfortunate that someone has attached a number to the layoffs of 4,000 to suggest through the public service that there are still another 4,000 FTEs to be laid off. The ministries across government have been aware of this for some time through much of 83-84 fiscal year, and in fact have taken steps. We have indicated the target that we will achieve by the end of 84-85, and that does not necessarily mean that there are another 4,000 jobs to disappear from the public service.
Mr. Curtis, in your estimates, your new estimates yesterday, you gave three figures for 82-83, 83-84, and 84-85. And your FTEs, your full-time equivalents, drop by those figures, 46,000 to 39,000 to 35,000. Therefore, ipso facto, by the end of 85, you will have laid off 11,000 civil servants or full-time equivalents. That's what it says right here.
Full-time equivalence is correct, but you also will recognize, and we've discussed before on your program, that we have peaks and valleys in the course of the year, in the course of the working year, for various ministries who have the need for more employees at a particular time and less at others.
Mr. Curtis, are we wrong in saying that with 39,857 full-time equivalents this year, that next year we'll only have 35,410, a drop of 4,417 full-time jobs?
You are correct in terms of the eventual goal, but first of all, Jack, I think, again, I have to restate, we speak of full-time equivalents, the phrase to indicate one person employed for a full year. A number of employees in the public service are not employed for 12 full months.
No, but you're giving us the full-time
but just a moment. You cannot, I'm giving you full-time equivalents. But,
yeah.
But certainly we're already well along the line towards achieving that goal which was stated some time ago.
Correct, sir.
Okay?
I'm quite correct that we had 46,000 in 82-83 and we're going to have 35,000 FTEs in 84-85.
Yes, that's correct.
And you saved $100 million in your layoffs in 83-84, correct?
Approximately, yes.
And you'll save another $100 million 84-85.
Approximately, yes.
How much, therefore, sir, and we've never had an answer to this question, and it's not in your budget, have you saved precisely on your restraint? We'll grant it was very necessary in many ways. How much have you saved?
It was necessary in many ways. It was essential, Jack, and you know that.
But how much have you saved? $100 million, is that correct?
We've saved, in effect, more than that, because associated with any particular job undertaken in government are ancillary services, the provision of space, the provision of vehicles. The list is really quite endless in terms of associated costs in addition to that which is paid to the individual employee.
Right.
That's fundamental in business, it's fundamental in government.
Right, sir. Let's say I made a number of provocative statements which I think are correct at the beginning, and I want to check them with you one by one.
Well, they were certainly provocative, but...
can you think of any that was wrong?
Well, let's go through them.
Let's go through them. Let's take, first of all, the $470 million you are taking out of current revenue from your Resource Stabilization Fund to, quote, eliminate the debt in the PGE. That you've done.
The BCR, as it's now called.
BC Rail. That
Yeah.
you've done. Is that correct?
That is part of the fiscal plan for 1984-85, and that is the historic debt, quote unquote, the old debt, as you indicated at the top of the show, with respect to earlier construction and earlier operating losses, capital losses, in the British Columbia Railways
We all
development.
remember the Dease Lake fiasco, NDP and yourself, $300 million down the tube, don't we, sir?
Yes, we recognize that it was a very expensive construction job, along with the Fort Nelson extension.
But just to keep it simple, if your $470 million with your sinking funds and the interests will totally retire in due course the BC Rail debt.
It will indeed, and I represent a constituency which is not directly affected by the British Columbia Railway. But the fact of the matter is, the BCR is a vital part of British Columbia's economic activity and health and future development.
All right, but why, sir? In the good years, when you were wallowing in filthy lucre, you ignored the BC Rail debt. This year, when we're strapped and we see hardships all around us among the poor getting poorer, this is a year you take $470 million out of your resources. In the name of all that's compassionate, why now?
Well, it's not correct to say that we ignored the debt in previous years.
70 million.
We were allocating $70 million, that's correct. The fact is that we have an opportunity in this particular year to start directing resource revenue dollars towards retiring a debt. If you speak of hardship and if you speak of difficulties facing the province and the people of the province, if we left that to carry on untouched, we would, by the time the final maturities of those borrowings of the past for the BC Railway were paid off, we would have interest and principal payments of some $1 billion, something in excess of $1 billion.
I remember the Mackenzie Royal Commission well. But
yes, there's two things I think, if I may just interject.
Please.
The Mackenzie Royal Commission recommended that we do this, and the Auditor General of British Columbia has also recommended that we do this.
Sir, you'll concede that you and previous governments made a bad mistake in not tackling that debt in the good years.
Hindsight is always 20/20.
That's
and
all
the concession, I would think, would have to be made, yes.
All right, and otherwise, and I must go through this small exercise, due to your efficiencies and your economies, you came in with a $1.3 billion deficit instead of 1.6, correct?
Yes, revenues were up and expenditures were
And
down.
by the
Combination of the two.
By the end of next year, you will have a $600 billion deficit, which is magnificent.
600 million. Yeah.
If
I
you
think that
hadn't put the $470 million in, you would have had a mere $200 million deficit at the end of next year.
Well, whether it's 200 million or 600 million, I'm not prepared to identify that as mere. The fact is that the cost of operating government in British Columbia in the coming fiscal year will be significantly less than the cost of operating government last year and in the previous year.
Yeah, well,
So-
I just want to finish one thing, sir, and I was one of those who argued against the feather-bedded civil servant, so I'm not your enemy all the way on it. You have not convinced me yet that you're going to do anything other than lay off seasonal, temporary, and full-time employees, because you give the numbers in your estimates, of less than 4,000 in the coming year. 4,000 civil servants now in fear and trembling that their jobs will go.
Well, they need not be in fear and trembling. I tried to identify that situation just a little earlier.
Try again.
The fact of the matter is, Jack, that we first of all, in 1981, when we saw difficulties, we imposed a hiring freeze. Then we moved into the compensation stabilization program in February of '82, just 2 years ago. This process of reducing the cost of government through the number of employees and through activities of government has been going on for at least then 2.5, if not 3 years. And so it need not and should not come as a surprise to any British Columbian that we are continuing on that particular course. We believe that by doing this, we are going to have a healthier British Columbia economy, not some number of years down the line, but relatively quickly. That's the whole purpose. And Jack, you dismissed the $200 million if one puts the $470 million for BC Railway aside. Don't forget, and I'm sure you haven't forgotten, and your listeners and viewers haven't forgotten, that we now have, as of March 31 this year, an accumulated deficit for the cost of operating government of $1.9 billion. plus the $671 million for 1984-85, that's $2.6 million. So we're coming out of the woods. I think the improvement since last year is quite significant, but I'm not yet prepared to rest on my laurels or to break open the champagne.
Mr.
But
Curtis,
we see some improvement.
Mr. Curtis, we'll get down to the nitty-gritty about the people whom I say you've kicked in the teeth, delicately, of course, and with panache, after the break. Mr. Curtis, many people will admire your toughness with Monique Bejan and her emotionalism on universal Medicare, but please explain to me as simply as possible, are you prepared now to wipe out user fees and to charge each family unit, as I see in your budget, and I work it out, $50 universally per head to cover all user fees on top of premiums?
The single charge that I spoke of yesterday is British Columbia's response, and I think that it's the kind of response you may find occurring in other provinces. I have no specific knowledge of that. To Ottawa's insistence that we remove user fees. I also said yesterday that if you look at the total cost of hospital care, the user, the patient, is paying about 3%. All other taxpayers are paying 97% of that.
That's why it's universal.
That's why it's universal. We are prepared to sit down at the table with the federal Minister of Health, the federal Minister of Finance, and provincial Ministers of Health and Finance to try and bring some common sense to this. There is this preoccupation on the part of Madame Bejan with respect to user fees, which I think is irrational.
Oh, it may well be, sir, and I don't want to get into the Lalonde two-step, but the fact is that you have a plan by which we might face a $50, my figure, good estimate, the 40 million divided up, correct?
Yes, it's an approximate figure.
Approximate, $50.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And then on top of that, you have what some people regard as the unmitigated gall to charge 8% on personal income tax to raise $167 million in the full year as an added Medicare charge.
Well,
correct?
Jack, I think that you have previously, and I trust that you will in the future, observe the real root cause of the problem, and that is the fact that we are, the provinces, not just British Columbia, the provinces are being underfunded by the federal government in terms of health care. And at the same time, we are being told that we cannot levy user fees, but Ottawa has cut back on the amount of money. This was the sole topic, with the exception of 2 or 3 other inconsequentials, the sole topic of conversation among 10 ministers of finance, including the NDP Minister of Finance for Manitoba at the, what I would call nearly ill-fated one-day Ministers of Finance meeting with Marc Lalonde in Montreal in early December.
But let's stick to the topic. You've gone for 8%, which is about 3.75% on your actual tax, on a surcharge on personal income tax, and you're not going to apply it all to Medicare, are you?
I am indeed.
167 million bucks?
It is going for health care in British Columbia.
Ah, not Medicare.
Health care generally, that in all its phases, including Medicare. But Jack, I think to keep the context appropriate, or at least to keep it clear in this discussion, we have to recognize that one ministry of all, one area of program activity of all in government shows an increase in 1984-85 expenditures, and that is the Ministry of Health. And we recognize that British Columbians, as with other Canadians, consider that health care is indeed one of the most important services that government offers and must continue to offer to the fullest extent possible in our country.
Well, I just wanted to get it clear. The 8% is to buttress the additional monies needed for hospitals, for Medicare, and for any other necessary health expenditures, correct?
That is correct. But health expenditures, underline, health expenditures.
It's a new tax on health expenditures, some of which may go to Medicare itself. Now, you have kicked the doctors right in the guts. You say too many doctors getting too much money beyond our ability to pay. Are you going to cut back the incredible amounts the doctors have been pyramided in the past few years?
Jack, the amount of money which is taken out of the system by physicians and by those who use physicians, who turn to their physicians, is of concern to the government. The Minister of Health, I'm sure, will be speaking about that in greater detail in the course of the budget debate.
Correct.
The fact is that we have a higher number of doctors in British Columbia than one might expect otherwise.
You got to clip the wings, haven't you?
We have to cut that portion of the cost. I hope we can do so in a reasonable and responsible and appropriate fashion.
You haven't finished negotiations with them yet, have you?
No, we have not.
I notice, however, that you're going to cut, I hate to throw this in your teeth, the FTEs, the civil servants in health, by 1,100 people. 1,100, where are they going to be cut?
There is some privatization which will occur in the broadly based health activity. And some of those were spelled out in the budget as well and have been spelled out quite recently.
So therefore there's going to be more privatization almost everywhere. Now the next one, very tough one. Small business. I looked at your small business estimates, and you're a government which I thought was devoted to helping small business, and you have cut the provincial government grants to small business by 30%, $4 million, and you've apparently cancelled out your cost sharing with the federals by taking away $12 million of your participation. That's tough. That was not expected. Why have you done it?
Well, knowing that you're a fair man, Jack, you should look back to the 1983 budget and see the steps which were taken in terms of property tax and the assessment on machinery and equipment, where I raised the exemption level for small businesses from $1,500 property tax assessment to $50,000. That is going to be experienced as a benefit this year, 1984 property tax year, for some 15,000 business firms. So if you want to point out cuts in certain allocations, then I would think that it is only fair and appropriate that you recognize some of the other steps that have been taken to assist small business.
Well, I must say this, Mr. Curtis, you could not call this a pre-election budget in any way, shape, or form. This is a tough budget. You've been real cold-blooded and brutal on it.
I don't feel cold-blooded and brutal about it. I feel very realistic about it. You know, the media, and I suppose politicians as well, speak of budgets as being pre-election and post-election. I spent a couple of hours a few weeks ago reviewing the debates leading up to the May election in British Columbia, where we spoke about the kind of things that needed to be done, the things which British Columbians were telling us they wanted done in terms of the cost of government. And I also reflect on the fact that restraint won for Bill Bennett in May of last year. This is the kind of thing that people have been asking for, and which they are asking for of their federal government and other provincial governments. We're not doing it because we enjoy it.
Well,
I'd be much happier to, in terms of dealing with you this morning and in terms of just moving through the community, in pretending that the deficit doesn't matter and that things can go on as before and we'll give you more and more goodies. This is probably the most realistic budget to be presented in Canada this year.
I agreed. We'll move second and carry that motion, and we shall give you a pat in the back for your delightful English as you cut the welfare to single and childless couples, and that you're doing this to preserve the benefits for those most in need. This is almost comparable to your old $50 away from the handicapped and wheelchair cases. You didn't. How much did that cost you? How much are you going to save on that $25,
Jack,
$50 thing?
I sat with a priest a few days ago and discussed with him. I wasn't in a position, of course, to disclose the steps which were being taken with respect to gay.
I certainly hope not.
Well, I guarantee I didn't. But I discussed with him and sought his views.
Not even the Pope.
I discussed with him the concerns about those individuals, whether they are single parents or whether they are a married couple with 1 or 2 or 3 children, and asked, how do we ensure that we protect those people in terms of income assistance? And is that not where we really must target? There's that word again. We really must target the limited assistance that we can offer. And I sensed that he was in agreement with the concern that I have with respect to those other than singles who frankly do have a little more mobility than a single mother with 2 children living in Nanaimo or Creston or Prince George or Vancouver.
I must admit, it's easier to be poor if you're single or if you've got no kids. But you've
got a little more flexibility. You don't have flexibility if you have 2 children in school.
That was a bad PR move. I'm surprised you went for it, that one. How much did it save you?
Well, it's not a question of saving money. It's a question of it's a question of permitting us to maintain intact and in whole the kind of assistance that we know that other segments of the unemployed require.
Okay.
So it's not a cost-saving measure.
One little political remark to you, Mr. Curtis, from an old-timer like myself. You're very lucky the NDP hasn't got a half-decent leader in sight, or you could be in political trouble. But you're lucky they haven't got one.
Well, Jack, I happen to believe that as the rhetoric dies down and as people have an opportunity to analyze for themselves the budget document that was presented, they will recognize that the deficit has been cut. That means that we're not going to be spending the next 5, 10, 15 years with this huge burden of debt, which all of us have to pay for, and that we are moving toward a leaner and a more efficient government, and a government that is getting out of the way of people. I think that's what the majority of British Columbians want.
Good, sir. Back to basics, pay-as-you-go, social credit. The finance minister now with the Resource Stabilization Fund can play any shell game he wishes with up to $600 to $1 billion a year from the Resource Stabilization Fund by taking it out of general revenue use and slapping it on whichever debt he feels is the biggest handicap, right?
The fact is that the debt is there and we have to attack it, Jack. It's not a shell game, and I don't think you really mean that phrase.
Well, you know how.
You don't really mean that phrase.
When you were in the opposition, you thought it was a shell game.
We lay it out. We're now producing more information for the people of British Columbia than has ever been the case in this province in terms of what we're doing and why we're doing it.
With considerable deference and respect, Hugh, every government civil service will look at the estimates today and he will say the Ministry of Finance, 1,210 FTEs going down to 1,097, ipso facto 113 are going to lose jobs. And that, you tell me, is not true?
Ipso facto, 113 are going to lose jobs. Some of those people are not employed for a full year. That was the point I tried to make earlier.
Some will lose part-time jobs.
You can have 3 or 4 or 5 individuals who make up one full job for one 12-month period.
Hugh, I've overshot my time with you. I'm grateful for your cooperation, and you've answered me better than I anticipated.
Thank you, Jack.
Thank you, Hugh Curtis, Minister of Finance. Webster, your call's to me now after the break. Brilliant, bright-eyed characters. Good.
One segment of phones and then...
I'll do a 3-4-minute segment of Roman right now, and then I'll go to a segment of phones.
Okay.
And that's it. Will you stop spraying me?
I have to. It's hanging down here. Don't. It looks lovely. Now give it back.
Right, the people will think I'm working on CKVU. Or the CBC. Fairyland. Hey. The film board. Are they still in business? Christ, you'd never know, would you?
They make taxation films, remember?
What are you going to ask me, Jack?
Oh, just a broad overview of it.
It's a broad overview?
30.
My guest for a short segment here is Roman Evancic, the president of the Certified General Accountants Association of British Columbia. Okay, you looked at it presumably in a kind of non-partisan, slightly to the right attitude. Is this a shell game?
Well, it certainly is an interesting accounting practice. We have something in the general accounting field called generally accepted accounting principles. And governments don't have those. They have government adapted accounting practices. And this is a beautiful situation. I certainly have to admire the person who developed the revenue resource stabilization idea, because it gives government all the options to do whatever they want. It's guaranteed to drive Dave Stupich crazy.
Yeah, I know, but right, this revenue, it comes from the old BC Petroleum Corporation set up by Barrett and other resources. That gives Curtis a fund of cash, even if times are bad, to do with as he wishes.
Gives him 100% of all the resource revenues after this year, in which he can move it any way he wants at his pleasure.
Didn't he say he was going to use 70% of it this year and 100% in future years for debt reduction?
Yes, but the reason that he can do anything he wants with it is because, you see, governments account for things differently than businesses, and you have a situation where when is a debt a debt? I mean, the BCR debt was an investment in a Crown corporation before. Today, it had to be repaid. So that kind of...
Did it have to be repaid?
Well, no, it had to be repaid based on their decision to repay it. It seemed to be, from a timing point of view, you know, with nothing done for job creation and incentive, it would seem that possibly that money might have been better spent there. But based on their decision, it was the decision to do it now, and based on their restraint practice. But indeed, you see, because you can move the expenditure and call it expenditure or put it in a Crown corporation at your will and pleasure, and you have the money sitting there to then turn it into debt as you wish, you've got a wonderful situation.
You're describing a shell game.
Well, I think you probably, it's very interesting, yes, because you can introduce the cells as you want. It's rather interesting.
All I've got to do to get $400 or $100 million to play with is create a debt and take it out the Resource Stabilization Fund.
Yeah, I don't want it on my budget, so make it a debt. And then when I want to pay it, I put it into the payment
Resource
out of the
Stabilization
Exactly.
Fund. I picked a figure which you'll tell me is right or wrong. If he had put that $470 million into his current revenues for the current year, what would have been his operating deficit at the end of '85?
$200 million.
200 million.
Exactly.
And all the time we're being told about 1.6 billion. We're broke, we're on our knees.
Well, no, it was 677 million was the deficit for the current year. And you take the 470 off of that.
That makes it 200 billion. So it just depends which way you want to switch the money, does that not?
Yeah, it's an interesting concept.
Now, small business. I took the basic figures. In fact, has he denied small business a large amount of federal money and incentives?
Well, indeed, part of it is not his fault, possibly, because some of the federal programs were being wound down anyway. But the thing is, no matter which way you slice it, there is approximately, let me see here, $15 million less to be spent on small business this year than there was last year.
And we'll lose the federal cost-shared programs.
Well, that's not included in here, no.
No, but in other words, if we don't put up our bit, we don't get the federal bit.
Yes, but keeping in mind that some of those programs were being wound down. So it's a major reduction in the money being spent.
Well, why should
business?
Businessmen are always screaming free enterprise anyway. Why should they get that kind of help?
Well, the fact remains, and I don't know if you listened to Lalonde's budget and you saw the Canadian Federation of Independent Businesses study, that from 1978 to 1982, basically all new jobs created were created by small business. We're talking about creating jobs.
Oh, I know that.
So this seems to be not in line with that.
Just a short summary of his health tax. The 8% on personal income tax translates into what in federal tax? An extra 3.75%?
Yeah, that's right. It's going to cost the average taxpayer, depending where he's at, either nothing if he's around the $12,000 mark, or as much as $60 every $120, $130 a year.
But if my federal tax bill is $100, that's payable directly and separately. That means that their bill this year will be $47.50. Is that correct?
Yeah, this year on the 8% side, it's going to cost you about half, about $50 to $60.
About 50 to 60 at that particular level. High earners will be kicked in the teeth on that one.
A little more, yes. Yeah.
More than
but that's not taking into account now the special levy, which we haven't talked about. The special levy is an additional $50 of income tax you're going to have to pay in addition to that. So it could conceivably cost a person earning about $40,000 an extra $200 a year.
That only comes if Nielsen loses his fight with Bejan and has to get away from the direct user fee charges and makes the feds collect it for him on the federal income tax at $50 a family, probably 20 single, right?
Well, based on what I hear Monique Bejan saying, that's the fait accompli. She's tabling that legislation now.
Look, very helpful this morning, Roman Evancic, President of CGAs of British Columbia. I'm going to do one segment of calls on the phone. Will you stay with me in case there are technical questions? I'll do the political ones so you don't get in trouble. After the break. Well, I've got to get into these CFDC people and the next segment.
6 minutes, I'll put you on the Stephen.
Who's here first?
Oh, well, they wouldn't be here first.
Are they here now?
Yeah, and they have to be gone by 10:30 still then.
Well, can I do the Smother Brothers first? Do you boys mind?
Then we can go.
Hey! Well, let's do the Smothers Brothers first. They'll be brighter.
So how long do you want for phones, Jack?
I'm going to run over anyway. Tell them that. Stuff it.
Okay, they know.
They know that.
I'll give you a count to 8 then and you'll be able to.
How are all my old friends over there? That's our demographic group. These are our demographics. When did we last meet? Tomorrow. I'm going down in June to speak to the Broadcast Executive Society. I'm going down this June.
30 seconds.
Anybody intelligent?
15.
Fucking Smothers Brothers. Get my
9, 8,
fucking pain in the
7.
ass. Skip the niceties this morning and tell me what you think of the budget, or if you have a question, make it short and sharp. Don't wander all around the point. Go ahead, please.
Morning, Jack. How are you this morning?
Skip the niceties. Get to the point.
Okay. My first question is, with the finance minister this morning, I noticed, why doesn't he take a price cut in his paycheck?
Well, that's a silly remark at the moment. They're not about to take a price cut. Have you any valid question?
Yes. What isn't, is there a way that we can impeach the government? And
No way. You're not in the United States. There ain't no recall, no nothing. They're until the next election. Go ahead, please.
Hello, Hugh Curtis said something about the healthcare maintenance tax, the 8% tax.
Temporary healthcare maintenance charge on your personal income tax. Plus
He
maybe
said that it was all going into the health.
He said it's all going into health services.
Well, I think he should talk to his health minister, Jim Nielsen, because it's right in the province paper this morning.
The
He
fact
said
that
there's no guarantee at all that all the money will be spent on health.
I would suggest that Curtis may be right on this, but that's the trouble with Ottawa. They get these funds from Ottawa, they put them in general revenue, and they do Ottawa out of the credit. You may be right, I don't know.
Well, it's right in the province. You can read
The
it
fact
on
that
page
it's in the province doesn't make it accurate, but it sounds like something Nielsen would say. Go ahead, please.
Hello?
Yeah.
All right, my remarks are on two areas of the finance minister's remarks, and one is that the philosophy of the social credit government, in effect, is to the longer the bread line in British Columbia, the better off the province is going to be. I don't think that they even thought for 1 minute or cared where these people are going to get a job that are not going to have one after they're gainfully employed by the government. The second aspect of it is this health care thing. What they're saying, in effect, is because Monique Bedan in Ottawa said we're going to withhold funds if you double bill, that they're going to put the load right onto the back. We're going to get even with you by putting it right onto the back of the citizens of the province.
And on the federal tax form. I agree with you entirely. I said off the top this morning it's a cold-blooded bookkeeper's budget, and I'll just put that to Roman Evancic. It is a cold-blooded bookkeeper's budget, isn't it?
Well, it certainly is an accounting delight.
Yeah, no, but it's a cold-blooded budget.
Well, I wouldn't want to go that far. I mean, we have to have restraint. We have to recognize
Yeah,
that.
but we didn't have to spend the $470 million on this ancient debt on the BC Rail right now, did we?
I have to agree with that.
And he cut social welfare, single and childless, by 50 and 25 and $50. Go ahead, please.
Good morning, sir.
Morning.
I was reading his budget there. Why didn't he do like the guy in Manitoba, cut the salaries of the MPs, his own salary and the works? Then maybe some of us old people that has a pension might be able to live. Because when I went up to the store today, the stuff were up 6%. So who's cut Lord Bennett traveling expenses,
No,
and
no.
maybe we'll have something to do. Thank you very much, sir.
Half the cabinet ministers in the country are on junkets at the moment. They've got to have their dental plans. They've got to have their gold onlays, their gold inlays. They've got to have their index pension, and they're the last people who are going to make any sacrifice for the rest of the economy. And that applies to both sides of the House. Go ahead, please.
Good morning, Jack. The main question that I have is how can the provincial government justify rolling back welfare checks $25 and $50 a month when for a single individual they currently get $375, they're going to be getting $350. The average rent in Vancouver for a studio apartment now is $342 a month. What are these people going to use to eat with? I would suggest the one right the Socrates cannot take away is that according to the federal provincial cost sharing agreement, there has to be an appeal system in place, which there is currently, and anybody who gets their welfare check rolled back should appeal it and appeal it and appeal it, and we'll tie them up that way if no way else.
Still won't get the money. I've said, and I'll say again, it's a
Jack.
cold-blooded chintzy caper. Abbotsford.
How you doing? I want to mention a couple of things only. If this investor confidence budget is such an improvement over what we've seen in past years, how come we have to send all these ministers and all these cotton-picking junkets to sell the effort or flog the product or whatever?
Well, it's to get them out the way when there are possible inquiries into the forest industry. That's one reason.
It's absolute crap to the people that pay their wages. The second thing is, in this modification of this welfare system, if they want to modify the welfare qualification, why don't they modify it so that the people that have lived here for 5 years and are out of work get the income that they necessarily need, and those who are flooding in from other provinces who have only been here 6 months, why don't they make it harder for them to get an entire welfare check so that they go back to their own province and cost their own province? I'll listen, thanks.
Well, I'll give you the answer if you don't mind, Roman. Under the Canada Assistance Plan, a living, breathing Canadian who moves from place to place cannot be denied assistance. Still 50-50, isn't it? Right. Federal, Ottawa, Victoria share CIP 50 cents each. And no matter where you're from or who you are, if you're a landed immigrant in this country, you can be messed around, but you can't be denied welfare. Matter of fact, I've got a couple of relics from the 60s coming up soon, but I'll introduce them in a minute.
I'd like to just make one comment on what the gentleman said there about investment. There is something in this budget that will assist investor confidence, and that's
what is it?
Continued commitment to the direction in which they're going, and that adds stability, and stability is something investors like.
I would agree entirely. If you pare your budget to the bones, you cut your desk out, it will improve his AAA rating in New York right now. Putting $470 million into the BCR debt. Definitely. Great stuff for barons on Wall Street, wasn't it?
Definitely.
Shows these damn socialists have been wiped out in BC, doesn't it? Roman, you've been a big help this morning. Not that big a help, but big enough help. Let's put it that way. I was out to a nightclub last night for the first time in 10 years. It was very good. And I recognized a couple of old buddies. One's a little bit slow and the other one's a real smart aleck. But you'll enjoy them after the break.
I didn't sing. I don't.
You did too sing in German. I heard you.
I didn't.
I heard you. Don't deny it. Don't stand up
Did
here.
you? Did you tape it?
Just
did you tape it?
No, I didn't tape it.
Then I didn't do it.
Oh, get out. Just get out.
How are you?
Good.
Nice to meet you, Dick.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you, Tom.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Is that okay for you, Jimmy? I keep thinking I'm mad as hell. I'm not going to take it anymore. Peter Finch, remember that?
Yeah.
Pretty soon, the callers are talking the same energy you are. You're bringing this anger out of these people.
Sorry, I'm gonna have to get. I'm gonna have to get.
No, it's age pensioner.
Sorry, I'm gonna have to get over that way a bit more.
How's your sex life, Tommy?
No, we're not.
Pardon?
I want them side by side.
Tommy? It's
pretty slow.
He's putting in a privatized market.
Trust me.
Yeah. You know, he put 15 government workers out of work because they're playing with their own parts now.
Do it here.
You get Jack all right?
Okay, we're gonna be serious. You carry this time. We were a little late. Tommy got a new alarm clock, and he doesn't know how to work. He's not very good with mechanical things. Call him at 20 to 9, so he's really rushed.
You got your winery still in Hawaii. What the hell do you do?
Not in Hawaii. Not in Hawaii.
Where's it?
It's in Sonoma.
I know.
California.
And you race the cars? No, you race the cars.
I race the car.
What the hell do you do?
Not a damn thing. He grows grapes.
Well, you grow grapes.
I grow the grapes.
You're a wino.
I'm a vineyardist.
Well, wino, vineyard, same thing.
Well, is a wheat farmer a baker?
Yeah, he is.
Not necessarily.
I'm in the manure business.
No shit.
Bullshit.
El Toro Caca.
Well, good not going back a long way this morning. They don't look a day older than they did in the 60s when they were fired from a big network show for being nasty. And Tommy, of course, you know, Tommy pretends to be a wee bit slow and he passes the exam very well. And then there's a smart aleck Dickie. Tell me about his trouble with the alarm clock this morning.
Well, Tommy's not a mechanical wizard. There's some people, they get close to mechanics, it falls apart.
Blink your eyes. Good, he's alive. Carry on.
So I called him at 20 minutes to 9, and he said, boy, he didn't know where he was, what city it was, why I was calling him. And then he said, why didn't you call me earlier?
Yeah.
I said, I have my own, I call up, and I get waked up.
I'd say last night you didn't give any shafts. We've got so many political monsters you could have cut to ribbons last night. Are you back into the political shafting business?
Well, I don't know the Canadian politics as much.
Just the same as the Americans.
Well, I don't know which one to shaft, though. I know there's probably a lot of people. I don't come to another country and talk to, like, I don't know the people.
They're making a foolish of you.
That's my job.
Is that your job to make a foolish of you?
I'm a foolish person, that's my job.
If I gave you a few tips, would you make a few cracks?
No, but we'd like to give you 5 minutes, 10 minutes of our show each night if you want to come down there, and we'll bring you right on, and you could play to the drunks.
Yeah, well...
it's hard to, when you're sober, play to drunks.
I know.
You know, you reminded me, I was listening on the FM, on the radio, when we were driving out here, and you were talking to the finance minister.
Yeah.
You reminded me of my brother talking to me.
Surely I wasn't that nasty.
That nasty.
Is that how he treats you?
Yeah, I said I could leave him at home, just talk with you.
Yeah, same thing. Well, it's necessary to be smart when you're dealing with people who are perhaps just a little bit slower.
That's right, but I'm only smart relative to my brother's intelligence. To the normal people, I'm pretty slow, too.
You're pretty slow, too?
It's a genetic problem.
Yeah, well, you've made a great comeback, you boys. How did you manage it? How did you manage to wake them up to make the comeback?
Fear. We were full of fear. We weren't working.
Actually, Jack, good question, because when we were thrown off the air in 69...
69?
69.
April.
Canada and the Canadians were the only ones that got the Smothers Brothers show uncensored, which was no big deal, but the 70s were very difficult for us. And a lot of jobs dried up during the Nixon times, and we weren't working very much, so we did theater. And then about 3 or 4 years ago, we started doing a nightclub act again. Mm-hmm. And that seems to be more fun. And we're just as passionate about what we care about, but it's so much more diffused there in the States now, who the good guys are and the bad guys. They kind of cross over the lines, you know, they'll take up liberal causes that are conservatives, and it's confusing. I'm not that fast anyway, but in the 60s I knew who the bad guys were.
Yeah.
Even you did.
Yeah, yeah. No, you can't tell the difference.
I can't tell the difference.
Oh, surely you can teach them the difference in Mondale and Reagan.
Oh, yes.
Oh, yeah, that's easy.
But that was just like dealing with Humphrey and Nixon. Humphrey was sitting around when he ran against Nixon back in 68, I believe it was, and there was hardly... Mondale's pretty...
exciting. He's
wishy-washy.
Yeah.
I like Cranston, who was pretty flat, but he talks.
My favorite.
And Jesse Jackson.
Jesse Jackson's my favorite.
Jesse Jackson's turned into the Pat Paulson of the 80s, and I think that's important.
Yeah,
Remember we ran Pat Paulson for president in 1960?
Yeah, for president, you did. But go back in those days, what the hell was it that did that caused you to cancel the show? All I can remember are takeoffs and shafts at Nixon.
No, they were at, actually it was during the Johnson administration.
Oh, it was Johnson.
And if you remember, hindsight-wise, the Nixon administration came in very paranoid about the press, paranoid about criticism, and he was inaugurated, what is it, February they get inaugurated, or January? And then in April, he fired us, and we had done nothing. It was...
We were anti-Vietnam War, we were just pro that stuff, and they didn't like... It was being... If you'd have been down there, you could have been fired with us.
No doubt about that.
We could have, then I could
We
have said,
could all
hey,
have got fat together.
yeah, you're making a good comeback too.
Yeah, I could have learned to play old guitar gordo.
Guitar grande gordo.
You could have fooled me last night. You speak Spanish?
Yes, fluently.
Or is it just BS?
BS.
Yeah.
Is it BS?
Yeah.
It is.
What was I going to say? You're still a wino?
Yes, we, my brother and I have a winery. My brother has a winery.
Oh,
I have.
I thought you said you were a wino. Oh, you have a winery.
Well, I have a drinking problem, but I don't think that's important.
It's not anything to talk about on
None of
this
my
show.
business anyway, is it?
Yeah.
He pays his own bills.
Where's the winery?
It's in Santa Cruz, California, and the grapes we get from Sonoma, which is the very well-known grape growing region. I understand BC here has a good wine industry too.
No sugar.
We don't have sugar in our wines.
No,
he said they have no sugar up here.
There's not enough sugar content in the
so they don't
grapes.
mature, huh?
Now, we bring them up from the States, and the
from
local
West?
Italian community do make the grappa by trampling in the barrels old-fashioned style.
Well, you're going to get in trouble. There's some nice little wineries up here. There's some nice areas, Washington State, Oregon, and we have some nice wineries.
You know where you are today?
Where?
Where are you today?
I don't know.
Vancouver.
Which province are you in?
British Columbia.
BC.
Yeah, which you hadn't queued up. Who's the race driver? It can't be you.
No.
No.
Very, very few things I do.
I've raced in Edmonton and Le Circuit in
Where?
Montreal. Circuit, is it called? Montreal?
Don't know.
The circuit. I raced Formula cars and endurance racing. And Tommy, you should ride with him. He drives like he's a race car driver. And I say, Tom, slow down. He says, hey, I'm genetically related to a race car driver. Don't worry about it.
You back playing Las Vegas again?
Yeah, a lot.
That's good fun, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a good place to play.
Do you ever play the slot machines?
I don't play them anymore. I can't figure out how to get to quarter.
Into the machine?
Yeah. No, I don't gamble. I don't gamble.
Seriously, you don't drink?
He used to.
No, I drink.
You
If
drink?
I have a problem, I have a drinking problem.
So it's a serious. No, it's no problem. He drinks.
Tell me.
He drinks, gets drunk, fall down. No problem.
No
Was it
problem.
your mother and father, your beloved mother and father, who created this monstrous domination of you, Tommy, by the smart aleck?
I am the oldest brother. He's the youngest.
The old dare, brother.
The older
When there
brother.
are two comparisons, it's old dare. When there are three comparisons, what's the word?
Old.
Est.
The oldest.
Old est.
Old est.
And he's the oldest. There's two
He's the
sisters.
Yeah, but
Let's put a government pamphlet out on this. I think we need a pamphlet on grammar.
you started what when you were kids?
It started when we were in our teens, playing guitar and singing in choirs and stuff like that. And then when we got the television show, I don't know, we just looked around and
It took off.
everything was kind of messed up.
But it's more than that. Tommy brought together a bunch of very, very talented people. From
How did you get in?
I was his nepotism. Steve Martin wrote on the show for all those years. Rob Reiner.
Matter of fact, you look like Steve Martin and you respond like Steve. You've got the same vacant look as Steve Martin.
He copied a lot of my moves.
He did?
Yeah.
Sue them.
I know he gives me money every week.
He gives you money every week.
You can't copyright slowness.
You know, did you mention we're at the
Plaza International?
Let him do it.
Plaza.
No, please.
Oh,
You see, you dominate them
no,
all
I
the time.
finish his sentences because he takes so long.
I don't know either which one I want to work with, you or him.
Where are you playing now?
The International Pancake House?
No, Plaza, International Plaza.
Plazaz.
Plazaz Club at the International.
In North Vancouver.
Yeah.
First time I've been in it. It's remarkably nice.
Thank you.
Mind you, when you're not drinking, it's very quiet.
You don't drink. You have a
No, I
drinking
never
problem?
touched a drop in my life. No. I have never touched a drop.
We lie a lot about our drinking
I
problem.
signed the pledge when I was 12. I don't swear either. Do you want to chat up the Smothers brothers? We've got to have a segment of calls with Tommy and Dick at the Plazaz. Why am I giving you such a plug for it?
No, you're an old liberal too.
I'm not that old.
Getting close, so.
How old are you?
I'm 22.
That makes me about 36, you lying SOB. After the break.
Everybody, la 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 la, la 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 la, la 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 la, la 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 la, la 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 la. La 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 la, do 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 do.
We might find some people who are just about as bright as you, Tommy.
We could have a long silent segment then.
We could have. I'll try not to harass the callers.
Okay.
But you've got to respond quickly.
Okay.
Go ahead to Tom Smothers, or Dickie Smothers.
Oh.
Yeah.
First of all, I'd like to say, when I was 8 years old, I used to love watching the Smothers Brothers. Now I'm 25 now. So, well, what I would like to ask, if a major network came up and said to you guys, we'll give you 26 weeks, would you ever go again?
Yeah, we'd say, how much money?
No, we wouldn't.
Wouldn't we?
No, it would, I don't know what kind of a question that is anyway. No, we would probably, if we were offered a show, we would probably take it, and we would figure on going about a year and a half, and then probably be fired. And it's very hard not to have a show and not use the position to say some things. Was it
really the Pat Paulson bit with running for president that really, and all the political stuff you guys did, that sort of canned yourself?
No, it was primarily the fact that we were very vocal about about not liking the war in Vietnam, and we did sketches on it, and we satirized a lot of the politicians, particularly the Nixon administration. And it was primarily...
It was social commentary. There were censored pieces on the show about censors.
Yeah.
And they cut out the things about censors. It actually was an accumulation of 72 aggravating weeks for CBS.
But you went all through that. CBS censored you every week, read your
Yes,
scripts?
every week. And they pre-showed our show to the affiliates. And then if the affiliates had something they didn't like, they would cut it out. So we had to be
a chance of your old shows coming back on, like in syndication or whatever? Because I'd just love to see all the old shows again.
We might, we own the copyrights to the shows. We just haven't had a chance to. They're big shows with big orchestras and stuff, and they're kind of hard to syndicate. But we're thinking about some way of getting them out to people with all the old commercials and the same old...
Hey, listen, people would go for it.
They might.
We should do it soon before everybody kind of passes away.
Yeah. Go ahead to the Smoth Bros.
Yeah, Tom.
Yeah?
A few years ago, you did a movie. You played a magician.
Yes.
Okay, what was the name of the movie?
It's called Get to Know Your Rabbit. It was done with Orson Welles and Catherine Ross. It was my big film that happened in 1970, and it's still seen in small movie houses.
Is that right? I remember it as one of the funniest movies I've ever seen in my life. Did Dick ever play a cameo in it?
No, he's not good enough to be on to have a film. No,
Okay,
he's
thank
never
you
been
very
on.
much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Go ahead, please.
Yeah, I was just, I've followed just like everybody else, you guys for years, and I've watched your satire on politics, et cetera, et cetera. I'm not really too familiar with too much American politics, but really, what are your leanings? Is it just liberal, or do you have any kind of, are you just critical of everybody, or?
What's the dogma of the Smoth Bros?
Well, our dogma was we're not active politically. We don't belong to any kind of political party. We're not active. We don't join in anything. Just what we feel personally. Sometimes I'll just hear someone lying and it just piss me off. So, and that's basically. I'm kind of like you.
You could have my job.
I
think it's sort of like you. You know, you hear things that affect you personally, and you say, oh, that's not fair.
Could you get that crew to shut up?
Just one last question. One of the previous callers did ask you about whether you're going to ever bring out your old shows or anything. Seeing as how there's a video cassette craze, I've got some of your tapes on my video now. Will you ever release them in a tape form?
That's what we're thinking about doing, is taking in packages of 4 the entire season, which was, I think, 70 shows.
72.
And maybe sell them in packages of 6 or 4 with everything in them, the same commercials, everything, so people can relive them again. That.
Go ahead, please.
Mr. Webster.
Yes, sir.
Welcome to Vancouver from the Smothers Brothers. One question that I'd like to find out from Tommy, if he has the modesty to admit what his IQ is.
Oh. Yes, I do. I took it in when I went to college. It was 92. And then I took it again and I raised it to 94, which goes to show if I'd have taken it 20, 30 times, I could have had 150 IQ.
As a matter of fact, I think that I read a subject on you some time ago that your IQ was very, very, very considerably higher than that.
I don't know who put that out because I took it and I saw the results.
I put it out.
Oh, my brother put it out. No, I'm not very bright. I'm instinctive, but I'm slow. But that, just because I'm slow doesn't mean I'm stupid.
You know, it's really great to see you guys back on the air again.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. And I would really like to see some of your continued show and the same format that you had before. I thought it was great.
Yeah, enough is enough.
Yeah,
What I hate more than anything else, Tommy and Dick, is a loving.
Yeah.
It makes you want to throw up.
Hey, Webster.
Yeah.
People even like you.
That's only because they can see the sparkle in my lovely blue eyes.
Thanks very much.
Ooh, you got away with buttons.
I hit it too hard. Go ahead, please.
Yes, I was wondering. When my sister just came out, it says the Smothers brothers were once D-Malays.
Once what?
Once D-Malays.
D-Malays, little Catholic organization.
That's a Masonic, isn't it?
The Catholic? Masonic?
Yeah, we're D-Malays.
Are you D-Malays?
I was.
You are what, a D-Malay?
Yeah. I'm a Muslim now.
You're a Muslim now?
No, we were D-Malays when we were young.
Yeah, I was wondering if you still went out and supported any of the chapter functions.
No, we don't.
Oh.
Nothing personal, just that I
Let's
drank
do
a
another
lot.
short segment with the Smoth Bros, who are appealing at the Plazas.
International.
They know
what the Plaza is. You
These are
don't have
local
to keep
people.
correcting
You don't have
me
to
all
keep
the
correcting
time.
them all the time.
For
He knows what
goodness
he's
sake,
talking
why
about.
can't you do
You
as you're
come to
told?
this country, you don't even know what you're doing.
Take it, after the break.
Come on. Lighten up.
We think we're out in line insulting a lot of people. That's the time we end up with egg on our face. Okay, you gotta believe in it, Tommy. Believe in that yo. You have to zen that yo-yo out. Look at that yo-yo. Okay, Tom, without hitting me.
Yeah, you got it.
I'd like to say hi to someone.
Okay.
To a friend of mine lives in New Denver.
New Denver? Oh, they get us in New Denver.
They have electricity?
In the Slocan Valley.
Yeah, in the Slocan Valley. We went out and looked at
Well,
Slocan
say hello
Valley.
to him. You gotta say
Yeah,
hello.
what's his name?
His name is
Les Weisbrich.
his name is Les Weisbrich, and he's as an artist. He's about 10
Famous
years
artist.
as an
He's
immigrant.
a what?
Famous artist.
Artist. And he moved up here about 10, 15 years ago from
Beverly Hills.
Los Angeles.
He's one of the crop that came in during the Vietnam War, is he?
Oh, no,
About
he's-
that time.
About
yeah.
that time.
But he
that
was
time.
older. He wasn't.
He brought his
wasn't
family.
draft
He's
age.
Les who?
Les Weisbrich, and he's a pretty well-known
I'm
artist.
almost prepared to guarantee.
Pardon?
Anybody who knows Weisbrook in the Slocan Valley, call now on the long-distance line or
Yeah.
any line.
Yeah.
Or call through the switchboard.
Les
Maybe we get Les Weisbrook on the phone for you.
Oh, that'd be neat.
How much are these paintings worth?
Pretty much. I don't know what he's selling for.
Can you
but
get me one
beautiful.
cheap?
Yeah.
Yeah, probably.
Give me one wholesale.
Yeah, if you get him on the show.
Yeah, sure. Oh, here's a call from Lone Butte. Lone Butte is just off the Cowboy Highway at 91 Mile House. Is 91 Mile, is it?
No, it's Lone Butte.
Where is Lone Butte?
Lone Butte, well, I actually live at Hathaway Lake, B.C., which is right in the interior of the Caribou, about 40 miles from 100 Mile House.
Well, I told you, 60 miles.
I was going to ask Tommy and Dick Smothers if they ever get back to Redondo Beach. I went to high school with one of them. I was a freshman when they were a senior, and I'm just wondering if they ever get back to Redondo Beach and if they still live there and if their parents still live there.
No, we all moved up to Central California, but we do get to Redondo Beach. It's right outside of Los Angeles.
I know it.
And they have some good little nightclubs.
You're teasing
And
me
also, I
like.
was wondering if they're aware that so many entertainment personalities went to Redondo High. I don't know why that is.
Let's cut
'Cause
through
I
all
can remember
this.
They were quite funny.
Let's cut through this. What's your name? What's your name?
Les Ledger.
Do you remember West Ledger?
We didn't hang out with freshmen. He was a freshman then.
Oh, I see.
You hung out with my sister, Lorraine Ledger. As a matter of fact, Tommy took her out.
Uh-oh.
She is real. She's a nice.
Never been the same. Thank you.
Neither have I.
Thanks for that call.
Nice, eh? Redondo Beach. You think I'm stupid? I know what it is.
You know, Lindbergh graduated from that school.
Oh,
Charles
big
Lindbergh, the
deal.
flyer.
He was a neo-Nazi anyway. You won't get any change out of me and Lindbergh.
Did you know that?
Sure, I knew that,
Sure,
but that
neo-Nazi.
doesn't screw up a whole
So
career.
was,
just
so
because
was
they're
Old
Nazi.
Man Kennedy.
That's right.
I'd have put Old Man Kennedy up against the wall in 1939. Wouldn't you?
Yeah,
Come on, you guys. Hitler had a little bad press. That's all. He didn't get along with the papers. That's it.
Go ahead from Kelowna.
Yes, good morning, Tom, Dick, and welcome to beautiful BC.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I think you're doing one thing down there. You're missing the best part of British Columbia, and that's the Okanagan Valley. And there's lots of wineries up here.
That's what I understand, yes.
Beautiful fruit trees.
We don't need the tourist plug.
I know, but I'd love to see him come to Kelowna and perform.
Oh, thank you. We'll be there tomorrow.
You will. Great. We'll expect you.
Socially or professionally?
Yeah, professionally.
Professionally.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead, please.
Hello.
Yeah.
I'd like to ask the gentleman about their winery and also if any of their wines would be available up in B.C. here.
Smothers wine, and it's not available in B.C. I guess there's a big problem with getting California wines up here.
No, you can order it through a liquor board. Do you export wine at all?
No.
No, not out of California right now. We're only 4,500 cases a year. But when we get through the expansion, we sure will come up to Canada. There's a lot of good interest.
And it's called Smothers Wine.
It's Smothers.
Yeah, with a name like that.
Yeah.
Tell them our roots are Italian.
We're basically, our background is Italian. We had our name changed. We're named actually Smotherini.
Ernest
was our name. Ernest and Giulio Smotherini.
Most people could tell we're Italian by our accent.
I suppose so. You're the most unlikely looking Italian I've ever seen.
Yeah, well, there was some problems.
Ernesto and Giulio Smotherini.
Yeah, we don't know who our mother is.
I thought that was Ernesto. Oh, no, Giulio.
Ernest and Giulio.
Oh, Giulio. Okay.
Okay.
Go ahead, please.
Good morning, Jack. Good morning, Tom and Dick.
Good morning.
I'm so glad you've come to BC, and I'm looking very much forward to seeing your show. Something I would like to say to you both is I would love to see you come back on a sitcom or whatever, because I think your talent is much needed in today's society and today's way of doing things.
Thank you.
It's much overdue. I think our young people today need to see your type of comedy more. You should be more exposed to it.
Thank you.
Have them tune in.
Canadians
Webster,
feel much stronger about the Smothers Brothers than they do the Americans.
Funny that, isn't it?
Yeah.
I don't know why that should be.
Well, I think this is darn near freer. This is a freer society than in broadcast in every form than the States.
It's iffy.
Well,
this and that.
You wouldn't be on down there.
Well,
and you're
probably
on
not.
up here. You
No.
know, that's neat.
I'd say the people up here seem more vital. There's more energy.
It's certainly good to hear because we regard ourselves as a bunch of dull, apathetic clots.
No.
You ought to take another look at yourself. You're pretty
not
close,
you,
yeah.
not him, not personally, not personally.
Hey, I want to throw up my porridge first thing in the morning?
Yes.
Okay, that's enough of that one. Last call. Go ahead, please.
Good morning. Welcome to dull, apathetic Clotland.
He's listening.
It's really good to hear you guys. But I was reading a book the other day, How Can I Keep From Singing, which is a book about Pete Seeger.
Oh, yeah.
There's a segment in there about when he appeared on your show. And there seems to be a bit of an allegation that he felt that he was censored by you two. And I'm wondering what your response is to that, because I found that totally unbelievable.
Answer the question, witness.
Absolutely incorrect. He was a guest on our show, and he had been blacklisted. And as a guest, we said, "What show would you like? What song would you like to sing?" He said, "Waist Deep in the Big Muddy," which was put down in the Vietnam War. CBS wouldn't let him do it. We brought him back on, and the second time, CBS allowed him to do it. Yeah. We were always great supporters of Pete Seeger.
I think you just misunderstood. The CBS in the show was censored the first time, but we kept bringing him back till he could sing the song.
Okay. I'm very grateful for your presence here this morning, gentlemen. Tommy Smothers, Dickie Smothers, and the Smotherino kids with your wine in the basement. And where is it again?
In the garage.
San Jose?
Yeah. Santa Cruz.
Santa Cruz.
Santa Cruz. And you can see them for how long?
Till Saturday. Two shows a night
through Saturday.
At the Plazaz.
You say it.
It's at Plazaza.
Plazaza, North Vancouver. Thanks, Tommy. Thanks, Dave.
Thank you.
Next, we're going to talk to the boss and the executive director of the Canadian Film Development Corporation to find out why none of the money comes to British Columbia after the break. I'm on again about money with a difference this time. You all know how strapped the provincial government is, and like it or lump it, if they say they're strapped and they handle the money that way, they're strapped, and services suffer. But you'll notice Jack Austin the other day, our unelected senator from British Columbia, walked into town and gave away $2 million for park projects, and you can't get 2 cents out of Victoria. Now I have 2 gentlemen here who will have control of $250 million over the next 5 years for something called the Canadian Film Development Corporation. And I have Ed Prevost, which is you. You're the chairman, are you?
I'm the chairman. That's
and I've got Andre Lamy, the executive director of the Canadian Film Development Corporation. What is this mandate you've got to spend $250 million? Convince me it's good for broadcasting, good for the country, and good for the People's Republic of British Columbia, which seems to be neglected in these matters.
Well, let's put the thing in perspective.
Tell me what the hell it is, first of all.
Well, the government has a letter of understanding with the Canadian Film Development Corporation, which goes back to last spring. Essentially, it gives $35 million to the corporation to administer this year, $47 million next year, and in any event, $254 million over a period of 5 years. This money is destined to try and provoke, stimulate private production for film and television. And television and broadcasting is very much an inextricable part of that package, because anything that is produced has to be exhibited within a 2-year period after the production has been completed.
It's just, don't let me be stupid about it. It's just the old Canadian content bit.
Canadian content is part of the package, certainly, because we want to develop valid Canadian and attractive Canadian productions. Certainly, we're not there to try and promote and produce things that people don't want to watch. Essentially, historically, and this is still a rather new industry in Canada, this Hollywood North as we call it, there have been a lot of unfortunate failures, but there's promise, there's tremendous amount of creative resources, but there was a lack of funds. Our competition, of course, is vast. We have the United States, who can pour in 10 to 20 times the amount of money into productions than we can. So we have to find a solution to this. The government has made a very large step, a historical step, I would say, by committing itself to the development of the arts in Canada, and particularly the film and television
Well, there's
industry.
got to be more to it than this. Now, come to you for a moment, Andre. How much does, and I'm not a CBC knocker, I think it's a feather-bedded, and I think there's a lot of waste, and they need 10 times as much equipment to do the same kind of job as we might do ourselves. I'm not knocking the CBC. How much they get?
The budget of CBC will be close to $1 billion a year.
I thought they were our flagship, apart from the National Film Board, to produce live, attractive, or taped documentaries, films, and dramatic productions. Are they not?
Yes.
Have they failed?
No, I think that they're still doing a good job, but not in the same field that the CFTC. The CFTC's mandate is to propose to the Canadian film industry to come up with some good, popular, prime-time television program. And the aims for this, what you qualify a huge amount of money, it's very little dollar compared to what is spent across the country for television program. Now it's a new ball game. The government, and it's part of the broadcasting policy of Mr. Fox, they trust for the first time the private sector, because the only people that could get access to the fund is a Canadian producer. With a letter of understanding coming from CTV or from your channel, they could come to the CFTC and get 1/3 of their budget.
Well, in other words, you don't put up the total budget.
No, 1/3.
My budget for my movie, which I'm going to make next summer,
yes,
a magnificent Canadian content live drama production.
You could come to us and get 1/3 of your budget.
I have a $300,000 budget, so I'll get $100,000
Right.
from you and put up $200,000 of my own.
No. Maybe you could get a license from CTV or CBC or any conventional television. 1/3 could come from the what's so-called the national Canadian market, or a pay TV license, or a provincial television license. Then you will have to travel around the world to get the other one of them.
In other words, Ed, I've got to sell my product on paper first and then go to get financing and produce it.
Absolutely.
Now, I've always felt, and this is where people get confused, that there's been a bit of a racket in these so-called Canadian movies where they bring up some has-been Yankee actor, make it in Canada on the cheap, Montreal or Vancouver or anywhere, and we've had a lot made up here. That's not you're not involved in that.
Well, this is true what you say, and we have been involved in trying to help redefine what Canadian content is all about. And the problem has been historically is that the CRTC had one set of definitions, the Ministry of Communications and Revenue Department had another set of definitions, and we had our own. Now I think we can say that we have a uniform set of definitions precisely as to what Canadian content is.
But I'm thinking about the old tax business where people could put in, like leasing an aircraft.
Get 100% tax
write-off.
Yeah.
Is that finished now?
No, it's not quite finished. It's down to 50% per year over 2 years.
That's not your caper.
No,
Well,
it's Department of Communication.
That's the Department of Communication.
That's right. That's right. They do handle the tax shelters.
Did they ever produce any good movies under that system?
We are not producing good movie. They are not producing. It's up to the Canadian producer to get access to the CFTC and to the tax shelter. But it's open. It's one way to finance the two-thirds of the money if they need it to use the
next
tax
very
shelter.
important question. Have we got the talent, and I'm not saying this negatively, have we got the talent waiting out there in the wings with the know-how and the expertise who can do this job? Are they not all presently working mostly for CBC and the National Film Board, I should imagine?
Well, we think certainly that there is. The private sector has been suffering and clamoring for more activity, and they haven't been able to do very much for lack of funds. And I think we embarked on this project, and certainly the Ministry of Communications would not have vested so much confidence in this program had they realized that there wasn't the creative resources there to do it all. I think when we're looking at our own contribution, we're going to generate over 5 years $1 billion worth of activity.
And it's only one element of the broadcasting policy. CBC will have to farm out 50% of their program in the private sector, except for public affairs and news. That is in addition to the role of the CFTC.
Just a minute. That was something I missed altogether. You're telling me that the CBC has been told,
yes,
stop producing 100% of what you're producing other than news and current affairs.
That's right. And farm out 50% of it across Canada.
Was this to get some of the fat out the CBC? Must be.
Your opinion is as good as mine, but I will let you to...
Yeah, but obviously, if you're going to say to the CBC, stop making 100%, only make 50%...
No, but it's a kind of an answer to your question. Yes, the private sector could deliver. I think the talent is there. It's just one way or another. We must reach for...
And furthermore, in favour of the CBC, a lot of good, bright, innovative minds in the CBC might be released from the bureaucracy and be able to
go back to the private sector.
The private way.
Yeah.
I want to find out, I'm going to go over a few minutes this morning, if there's anybody out there in the film production business, you don't care about actors, you just care about people with ideas.
Care about anybody, really.
Do you want your share of the $35 million worth of lolly? And I want to ask what share there is out here of the lolly right now, because I have a feeling not very much, and I could be wrong. Phone them now, even if it's close to 10:30, we'll run over a bit after the break. If you want your 35 million bucks in your hip pocket, little bit, after the break. Not to appear jealous or picayune on the People's Republic.
I know you're not.
35 million bucks. How much goes for French language, how much for English?
1/3 will be spent for the French language industry, and the 2/3 will be spent in English speaking.
But the French industry has got a live basis to work from to begin with. Do they make better and more movies than we do in the industry?
I'm not saying so. No, I think that there is some very good film coming up from the English Canada and French Canada.
Yeah, but I think that generally that the cultural homogeneity of French Canada has historically so far produced more variety and greater numbers of...
For the very simple reason that they can't use all this sitcom garbage that other people have been known to use.
Yeah.
But your next big disadvantage is very much, when I switch on my cable system at night now, and I wouldn't buy First Choice for nothing, I've got 20 stations to watch. How can we ever
How many
compete?
American have you got?
Oh, who knows? Half a dozen American channels, I suppose, one way or another. Some of them are rebroads, but I mean, how can you compete?
But we have to recognize the limitations of this marketplace, and of course the thrust of our whole program is to develop an international marketplace for these productions. So obviously the Canadian economic basin will more often than not justify the production budgets which are submitted to us. So we have to have an international dimension to our operation.
They got to be good stuff, though, haven't they?
Oh, absolutely. If not, it won't fly.
Andre, you're an old filmmaker, aren't you?
Yeah. It's the name of the game. You know, if they don't fly internationally, I don't think that the fund will be as successful as one could expect.
To be good, it's got to be sexy, hasn't it?
No.
I thought that's what sold
we're not allowed to do.
We're not allowed. We don't want to invest.
You are so too.
No, not by according to the rules and regulations.
What do you mean? Fox has said no soft
and
porn?
violence is
That's right.
Oh, no, that's...
We could go as far as film for adults.
That's your maximum categorization. Film for adults.
But I go by, my judgment is based on 1-to-1.
Based on what?
On one film at a time. You know, I don't want to make a statement about if we're going to participate to a sex film. I would like to read the script and make up my mind if it's a...
Are there any guidelines as to documentaries that you should... Can you do documentaries?
No.
Listen, I enjoyed Duplessis so much with the English subtitles that you begin to pick up the French towards the end of the series. Why is that the only one that's been done of that kind in this country? Do you think of another one?
I hope so. That it's a matter of the marketplace. I hope that the CBC, Radio Canada could come together, you know.
But can
and
your
say, let's
people
try.
do that? Can your people?
Oh yes, very much so. If there is a series of that sort, you know, CFTC could participate.
I might take this opportunity, Jack. We are going to change our name. CFDC remains, but it sounds as if we're an industrial research and development company. We're now going to be called Telefilm Canada, because to more properly reflect who we are and what we do, since 90% of our activity via the Broadcast Development Fund now is now geared towards mandatory television exhibition. So from here on in, we'd like to be known in the industry.
It's Telefilm.
Telefilm Canada.
Canada.
Telefilm Can. Has BC TV at any of this? Oh, we've got to take a break. And then I want to go to these calls. You want your shit of the lolly, we'll tell you how to get it. We might even accept an idea right now and write you out a check this morning. Is it time for a break? I've got to go exact for this break, haven't I? Go.
Yeah. Oh. And who are they?
I'm sitting here goring my own ox, am I? Has BCTV had any of this lolly?
Indirectly, the details of which Andre is familiar with.
Yes, I think that the project that was approved a few months ago called GIF, and they got access to something like $100,000.
Oh, that's my old friend Camponi.
That's right.
Yeah,
As a matter of fact,
Camponi.
we're going to screen some of the stuff this afternoon.
Merv Camponi, The Gift.
Yep.
Now, is that being made for television or for pay TV or what?
Every market, but I think that it was made first for the television.
I think we've still got some calls here. Now, what you're going to do is you're going to spell out the opportunities for Canadian film production units, writers.
Right.
Are you going to have any liaison organization on the West Coast?
There is already. There is an
office
office in BC, in
Oh,
Vancouver.
there is?
Yeah.
Okay. Go ahead to Messrs. Lamy and Prevost.
Good morning. There are only 25 million Canadians, and we're adding an additional $30 billion a year to our deficit. Do I understand you to say that we're going to throw away another 250 million on Canadian TV shows, as bad as they are? Thank you.
I think it's an appropriate question. As far as government policy with regards to their budgeting philosophy is concerned, I think this is beyond my jurisdiction. All I know as chairman of the Telefilm Canada now, we've been asked to administer $250 million over a period of 5 years, which is about $50 million a year. And this is to promote an industry that has been complaining about lack of government support.
Well, conceivably, it'll bring in $750 million of production work over the same 5 years.
That's right. That's right.
And we are as good as NDLs, vis-a-vis the people we ship south all the time because of the previous lack of opportunity.
Yep.
Right. Go ahead, please.
Yes, good morning, Jack. I'm very glad to hear that there's finally going to be some relief here and some input by the government. We have been in great competition with the Alberta people, the Alberta Film Development Fund, who has been assisting their people in that province in film production. As far as the quality of the crews and people here in this province, yes, we have the people here. We are constantly receiving letters from producers and people in LA who have come here and made films and have expressed their interest in working here. I know for a fact I've been involved in the industry for the last 5 years and been involved in a lot of major productions around the province. And there is a great need for some kind of funding here to encourage producers to come here.
Are you presently involved with CFDC or Telefilm Canada? Have you got some money from them?
No, I work, I simply stand by and wait till a film comes to BC, and then I am
an actor
employed. No, I work in production. I work in the transportation end of film production, and when a film is made here, they come looking for people like me, and we help to put the film together and keep it rolling while it's in production.
Good. Can you make a living at the moment?
Well, this last year, in 1983, I worked a total of 7 weeks. 1982, I worked a total of 6 months.
What the hell do you live on?
Well, I seek work in other areas while I'm
meantime.
waiting for films to come along. But
Okay, best of luck. Thank you very much. Here's a call from Seattle. Now, why would anyone in Seattle want to call me this morning? Go ahead.
What I'd like to know is, are you going to make the films in one area, or are you going to make them in or many other areas in the country? Like here, all the films always take place in California or its neighboring sidekick, Nevada or New York City. And not once has one film been made here in Seattle, probably back in the early 70s, but you don't see any television shows here in Seattle or any other area of the state of Washington.
No, the film must be shot in Canada, except if you people could develop a very good reason that we should shoot the film abroad. But one of the guidelines is the money must be spent in Canada.
He just wanted to make the point compared to the States where it's a concentrated industry.
Yes. No, this is not the case in Canada. You know, there is some crew that are very good from Halifax to Vancouver. Of course, there is a concentration in Montreal and Toronto.
Hey, before you go, what cable do you watch us on in Seattle?
Oh, I watch you on teleprompter, or what it used to be called teleprompter. Now it's called Group W.
Group W. Well,
Channel 8 there. We don't get Channel 6. We do get Channel 2.
Okay, that's enough. We don't need to give them a plug. Go ahead for mission, please.
Good morning. I think this action's long overdue by the government. I've been trying to get money since 1978 to do a film on these 20-foot great white sturgeon we have around Mission here. And I've been to Premier Cable, who I produced for 3 years, Molson's, and Mr. LeBlanc when he was Minister of Fisheries. I don't feel like giving away to the National Film Board. And I wish these gentlemen would maybe publish an address where we could write and send a proposal to.
Well, there's an office in Vancouver.
There is a.
That's right.
It's in the phone book.
CFTC in Vancouver.
CFTC in Vancouver.
And the name of the lady is Donna Wong.
Donna Wong?
Yes.
Wong.
You sure you got that name right?
Right.
I sure have.
The name is Donna Wong. Thank you very much. Is one allowed to make that kind of ethnic joke?
Sure.
I suppose so.
You could.
It would be wrong not to. You see, you can only insult Englishmen because of their, untouchable superiority. Or Scotsmen who don't give a damn. Go ahead, please.
Mr. Webster.
Yeah.
At a time of restraint, both the federal and the provincial government, how can these two gentlemen, how can just absolutely dish out $35 million right on private enterprise, which, by the way, isn't this what you have in British Columbia? Isn't this what the Liberal government stands for? Why don't they go out like your television station? You don't get a subsidy, Mr. Webster, from the federal government.
No.
You sell your product to private enterprise.
No.
Isn't about time? For example, in the forest industry, Macmillan and Plodell would just love to have that kind of money so that they can put some of the people back to work.
You do.
How about that, sir?
Well, perhaps we should look more closely at the revenue of British Columbia from log scaling, but that's another story. You got to make the point, Ed, that the $35 million is seed money for another $70 million.
More than that, actually, more than $115 million, because it's usually a $1 out of $1 for $3.
Oh,
we put in $1, and the other person or the other parties involved in the production put in $2. So there's a threefold effect.
Yeah.
But to be channeled to the private sector.
To be channeled through the private sector.
Absolutely.
They've got to come up with the idea.
The staff of the CFTC is 25 across Canada. We're not producer. The money must be used by the private sector. That includes CTV and this station.
So if we come up here with a very good idea, we have an independent producer, we've got to kick in 2/3 of the money.
Absolutely. That's
right.
We might be able to educate some of the East, because people like myself get sick and tired with the influence of the media mafia in Eastern Canada. And I mean that seriously. I'm not joking. You think this country revolved around Ottawa and Toronto. Montreal's not the offender. We never hear anything from Quebec at all. Go ahead, please.
Oh, hi. I was wondering, is the CFDC looking mainly to finance things for broadcast for television or for other formats also?
Well, essentially, if I may answer that question, television is an absolutely mandatory part of the exhibition distribution schedule, but naturally the production itself can be made for movie theaters, it can be made for pay TV, it can be made for satellite broadcasting, video cassette. We really don't care. It's not up to us to determine what the ultimate distribution system is. The only thing that is required is that it be exhibited on television at some point within a reasonable time after the production has occurred. The reason for that being that in the last 10 years, with all of these tax shelters and capital cost allowances and what have you, a lot of films and productions ended up on the shelf and weren't seen by anyone.
I'm grateful to your presence here this morning. Andre Lamy, Executive Director of Telefilm Canada. Films or film?
Thank you. Telefilm.
Telefilm Canada. And Ed Prevost, who is the chairman of the Bleeding Board. If we want to know, we know where to get the lolly from CFTC for the idea and 1/3 of the money.
Thanks for having us.
Best of luck. I'd like to see you succeed. I really would.
Thank you.
Get rid of some of the other junk we have on the air. Except Webster, of course. I'll be back. I'll take my break. I'll just sign off now. Tomorrow, 9 a.m. precisely.